He thought he was protecting a child. But it was him, built again better. Logan died with honor. But the clone woke up with rage. Wolverine gave his life to save innocence. But the clone remembers every cut, every lie. And now, the X-Men don't know who to fear more. The enemies outside, or the thing wearing Logan's DNA. Snow peeled off the Alaskan ridge like shredded paper. The wind biting deep as Wolverine's boots crunched over frozen steel. The facility was buried beneath decades of secrecy. Weapon X's last known outpost. Abandoned, or so they claimed. But Logan wasn't here for ghosts. He was following a frequency, a faint distress beacon, encoded in a way only his mind could hear. It wasn't a message. It was a memory echo bouncing off his bones. His claws slid out without a sound. The moment he stepped inside, the air changed, not colder, just wrong. Metal floor soaked in sterilization chemicals. The type of silence that came after screaming. He wasn't alone. Infrared sensors danced across the walls. Shadows moved behind reinforced glass. Broken containment pods hissed softly in the dark. Then he saw it. A chamber at the end of the corridor. Cracked glass. Inside, curled in a fetal position, was a child. No older than 9. Clawed hands. Messy black hair. Thin, shivering, but alive. Wolverine moved closer. The child opened one eye. Golden. Glowing. Then the alarms exploded. Red light flooded the hallway. Logan spun, claws ready, but he was already too late. The wall behind him erupted in plasma fire as armored soldiers poured through. Black suits, no insignia, masks built to resist psionic scans. One shouted, "Neutralize target L-23X. Eliminate the original." He didn't ask questions. Logan roared and launched himself forward. His claws tore through the first man's chest like fabric. He ducked, twisted, slashed again. 3 more fell. But these weren't rookies. They adapted fast. A gravity mine dropped at his feet, locking his leg mid-swing. The second wave hit him with concentrated magnetopulse rounds. He dropped to one knee, growling through the pain, healing slower than usual. Behind him, the glass chamber cracked completely. The child stepped out, silent, watching. One soldier spotted it, raised his rifle. Wolverine broke free. He jumped in front of the child, took the full plasma blast to the chest. It burned straight through. His skin melted, his ribs split, but his arms never dropped. He turned his head, just enough to see the kid still standing, still alive. He whispered, "Run, bub." Then the second blast hit. Wolverine fell. Smoke curled from the hole in his chest as the snow inside the facility turned red. The soldiers closed in on the clone, guns drawn. But this time, the child didn't flinch. His hands opened. Claws came out, not 3 per hand like Logan's. 4. Curved. Serrated. The glow in his eyes intensified. Not anger. Not fear. Awakening. In one breath, the child moved. Not like Logan. Faster. More surgical. A blur of muscle and precision. He carved through the soldiers in seconds. No hesitation. No mercy. No noise. When the last body fell, the child stood over Wolverine, looked down at the one who had saved him. He didn't cry. He just whispered, "You shouldn't have done that." Then he turned and walked into the snow. The Xavier Institute held its breath. Beast studied the genetic scans with shaking hands. Jean tried to enter the boy's mind and recoiled like she'd touched fire. They'd seen clones before. They'd seen weapons. But this was something else. The child refused to speak. But every movement was intentional. He didn't stumble. He didn't ask questions. He stared out the window like he was counting every tree, every exit, every possible escape. He mimicked Logan's stride, the tilt of his head, the curl of his lip. But when Storm knelt and said softly, "We're here to help you," the child simply said, "You didn't help him." Charles Xavier convened a closed-door meeting that night. Subject L-23X, Beast reported, isn't just a clone. He's a reconstruction, genetically perfected, faster reflexes, faster healing, a modified skeleton. The adamantium isn't coded, It's integrated, bonded at a cellular level. He's stronger than Logan ever was, Cyclops said flatly. Jean added, and emotionally blank. I tried to find empathy. I found recordings. Memories? Charles asked. Jean shook her head. No. Simulated torture loops. 10,000 hours of pain, all coded into his hippocampus like programming. He's a weapon, Scott muttered. No, Jean replied. He's a copy who remembers dying. That night, the child escaped. He didn't run. He walked. Every camera went black. Every door opened before he reached it. He didn't leave a trail. He left a location, latitude, longitude, Arctic Circle, Weapon X's original birthplace, and 3 words, written in blood on a chalkboard in the school library. Not your legacy. Deep inside a black site bunker, Agent screamed. The clone tore through them like paper. Security Metch deployed. He bypassed them before they fired. The facility director sent a coded emergency ping. L-23X is rogue, requesting Omega-level support. The ping was never answered. By the time the clone reached the core, he stood face to face with a storage server holding thousands of other clone embryos. Failed experiments. Mutant weapon trials. One still glowed. L-24X. Another version of him. He stood for a long time, then whispered, "No one else will suffer this." He crushed the pod with one hand. The explosion destroyed the facility. Miles away, satellite feeds showed a single silhouette walking from the fire, unburned, unafraid, wearing Logan's dog tags around his neck, and dragging an adamantium skull behind him like a trophy. The world thought Wolverine died protecting a child, but that wasn't a child. It was his mirror, sharper, stronger, and it had just declared war on everything that created him. The sky above Madripoor boiled with smoke. Helicopters circled, but never fired. They didn't dare. On the ground, a crater smoked in the ruins of a biotech lab. The name on the wall read Eden Labs, a front for deep genetic warfare research. Now it was reduced to rubble and blood. At the center stood the clone, unarmored, barefoot, breathing steady. He'd just killed 27 men in under 90 seconds. No powers, just claws, speed, and precision beyond anything Weapon X had ever built. And he wasn't hiding anymore. He stared into a nearby security drone, then spoke calmly. "Tell them I remember everything." At the Xavier Institute, the footage silenced the war room. Cyclops paced with his jaw clenched. Beast had stopped blinking. Jean tried to explain, but her voice trembled. "This isn't a runaway. He's targeting Weapon X-linked facilities. Every one of them wiped clean. Every one of them burnt from the inside." Storm leaned in. "How is that possible?" Beast turned the monitor. "Because his brain isn't just a copy. It's a weaponized neural archive. He remembers things Logan forgot." "What does that mean?" Cyclops asked. "It means," Jean said, "he doesn't just have Wolverine's instincts. He has his pain magnified, accelerated, and he's processing it in real time." Processing. He's learning from it, adapting. Charles Xavier floated in silence, fingers pressed against his temple. "I tried reaching him," he whispered, "tried brushing the edge of his mind. And," Charles opened his eyes, "I saw Logan's last memory, but it was reversed." "What do you mean?" "In the clone's mind, he wasn't saved by Wolverine. He watched Wolverine die and did nothing." The room went cold. Jean finally said what no one wanted to admit. He doesn't see himself as Logan's son, or brother, or heir. Then what is he? She met Scott's eyes. Judgment. They tracked him to Morocco next. A black site buried in the dunes. A clone farm meant to grow a mutant army resistant to cerebro scans. The site vanished in one night. Every operative? Gone. Every embryo? Destroyed. But on a single charred wall, the clone left a mark. Not letters. Not symbols. A slash, deep, clean, precise, across a mural of Wolverine. A correction. He wasn't erasing Logan's memory. He was rewriting it. Back at the Institute, the debates turned into arguments. Scott demanded a strike team. Logan would have wanted it handled before it spiraled. Jean refused. He's not an enemy. He's a fracture. A scar we didn't know we caused. Storm sided with her. So did Nightcrawler. But the council overruled them. Containment order authorized. Xavier announced at midnight. Not to kill, to retrieve. No one cheered, because no one believed they could. The strike team intercepted him in Brazil, a neutral zone filled with mutant refugees. The clone was surrounded by children, orphaned by wars fought by men who claimed to be heroes. He wasn't attacking. He was feeding them, sharing stolen rations, teaching them how to blend into the trees, move without being seen. He wasn't just Logan's clone. He was becoming what Logan might have been without the rage. But when the jet descended, the children scattered. The clone stood still. X-Men dropped from the sky in silent armor. Rogue, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Cyclops leading the charge. They didn't speak. Neither did he. The fight was instant. Colossus charged. The clone spun under him, carved a line through his armor. Not deep enough to kill, just to warn. Nightcrawler teleported behind him. The clone was already gone, claws out, predicting the blink before it happened. Rogue touched him. His healing factor overwhelmed hers, and she screamed as her body went limp for 3 full seconds. Only Cyclops remained, visor humming. "Stand down," Scott ordered. The clone tilted his head. "You point that thing at everyone, don't you?" I said, "Stand down." "No." Scott fired. The beam hit nothing. The clone was behind him, claws pressed to his neck. But he didn't strike. Instead, he said, "He respected you." Scott didn't move. "And you're already trying to erase him." Scott clenched his fists. "That's not true." The clone leaned closer. "I have his memories, his agony, his rage. But I'm not him." Scott's voice cracked. "Then who are you?" The clone turned and walked away, still deciding. Back at the Institute, the conversation shifted. He hadn't killed the team. He'd held back. But that didn't mean peace. Because the next morning, a message appeared on Cerebro's grid. Not a ping, not a distress call, just a projection. Wolverine walking through a forest. But this Logan was different. Younger, stronger. Then the image glitched. The clone appeared, overlaid on Logan's body, replacing him. It wasn't a message. It was a warning. "I'm not him. Stop pretending I was meant to be." Charles locked Cerebro down immediately. But the point was made. He didn't want to be Logan's replacement. He wanted to be the version they lied about. The one who wasn't controlled, wasn't used, wasn't disposable. And now he wanted answers. That night, Jean sat alone in the memorial garden, the place where Logan's name was etched in stone. The wind shifted. She turned. He stood there, the clone, quiet, watching. Jean didn't flinch. "You've changed." He nodded. "Not enough. You came here for a reason." "I came to ask one question." She waited. His voice was low. "Did he know?" Jean blinked. "Who?" "Logan. Did he know they made me? Did he know I existed?" Jean swallowed. "He found you. He died for you." "No. He died thinking I was a child." She didn't respond. "Did he know I wasn't?" Jean looked down. "No." The clone closed his eyes. For the first time, something cracked. Something human. He turned to leave. But Jean stood up. "You don't have to do this alone." He paused, then said, without looking back, "You already left me alone. You just didn't bury me." And then he vanished into the trees, faster than any of them could follow. The world now whispered of a shadow crossing continents, destroying facilities, dismantling networks, exposing the bloodied roots beneath mutant advancement. Not as a villain, not as a hero, but as something new. Wolverine died protecting what he thought was innocent. But what rose from his sacrifice was the one thing the X-Men were never prepared to face. A clone who never asked to be saved, and never needed to be. Blood steamed off metal floors as the clone walked through the final hallway of the Zurich vault. The guards had already fallen. No alarms, no warning, just silence, and a name carved into every wall with claws. Logan. He wasn't here to steal. He wasn't here to destroy. He was here to remember. This vault was never part of Weapon X's files. It was off-grid, privately funded, buried beneath 6 levels of fake corporations. But deep underground, inside reinforced adamantium walls, the truth lived like a parasite. Rows of failed clones floated in cracked tanks, limbs twisted, teeth shattered, some still twitching in frozen sleep. He stopped in front of one labeled Subject X, 92. Same face, same claws, but its chest never moved. He placed a hand on the glass. That could have been me. Then he turned to the console, unsheathed his claws, and smashed the core reactor. The tanks exploded behind him. He didn't look back. The world would forget them, but he wouldn't. When news of the Zurich facility's destruction hit mutant intelligence channels, every leader fell silent. Not just because of what was destroyed, but what wasn't. He hadn't left chaos. He'd left order. One untouched server, one file copied, one message routed through 30 global nodes and straight into the Xavier Institute's mainframe. I'm not erasing him. I'm erasing what you built from him. Scott stared at the message, jaw clenched. Storm said nothing. Jean sat in stillness. Charles finally spoke. He's hunting every trace of Weapon X. Not for revenge, for control. He doesn't want to destroy Logan. He wants to control who remembers him. And how? Like rewriting a myth, Beast muttered. No, said Jean. Like reclaiming it. At a classified SHIELD site in Australia, alarms blared for exactly 12 seconds. Then they stopped. The clone walked through flames, dragging 2 names behind him. Sabretooth, Omega Red, both enhanced, both genetically rebuilt after death, both thought unkillable. Now their bodies were stacked like broken statues. The clone didn't speak as he approached a satellite uplink. He recorded one sentence. I am what your monsters created to survive your heroes. Then he crushed the camera with one hand. Across the world, networks began to panic. Weapon Plus, AIM, even Krakoan Black Ops. Every group that had ever tried to control Logan's DNA suddenly realized they'd left fingerprints behind. And he was following them. He didn't kill innocents. He didn't take trophies. But every step he took erased a file, burned a lab, cracked a memory vault in half. He wasn't killing out of rage. He was cleansing. Wolverine's story rewritten from the bones outward. And that terrified everyone. Inside the Xavier Institute, Jean finally made a decision. She entered the Cerebro chamber. Alone. She locked the doors, increased the psi depth to level 9, focused her entire being on one signal, him. At first, nothing. Then ice. Her astral form froze in place. She stood in a memory that wasn't hers, but was flawlessly rendered. Wolverine dying. Again and again. But this time from different angles. One from the clone's eyes. One from overhead. One from Logan's own mind. Each version played out differently. In one, Logan screamed. In another, he begged. In one, he said a name she didn't recognize. And then she saw herself. Jean, frozen, watching, doing nothing. You're not supposed to be here. The voice echoed like thunder underwater. She turned and faced him. Not the child, not a copy, but the full version, older, evolved, eyes glowing gold, muscles wrapped in layered bioarmor, adamantium bones with thin golden veins. He had changed, not from violence, from adaptation. You're not running anymore, Jean whispered. I never was, he said. You just weren't looking. She stepped forward. Then tell me what you want. I want his story to end with me. You mean Logan? I mean the lie they built from him. The files, the experiments, the whispers of the perfect soldier. He wasn't a hero to them. He was a test. Jean hesitated. And what are you? His answer cut like steel. I'm the proof that they failed. She stepped closer. You don't have to do this alone. He looked at her, calm. I was never alone. I had him until you let him die. Jean flinched, but he didn't strike. He simply walked past her. And when she woke from the psychic plane, Her face was soaked with tears, not for what he'd done, but for what he was becoming. At a secure site in Wakanda, Black Panther reviewed the latest reports. He turned to Shuri. "Do we have any DNA samples from a clone?" Shuri nodded. "Two. Both altered. He's rewriting his structure, not just adapting, evolving." "How fast?" "At a rate that outpaces our modeling software. His cells respond to memory. His muscles reshape based on what he survives." Chala closed the file. "He's not just Wolverine's clone." "No," said Shuri. "He's becoming something Wolverine never had the time to be. A free weapon. Worse," she said, "a self-aware one." In the shadows of a burned-down facility in Russia, the clone stood at the edge of a grave. Not marked, not deep, but real. Inside it were bones, some still fused with failed adamantium, the remnants of others like him. He dropped something inside. Wolverine's old dog tags. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stood there in the snow, silent, still, until something moved in the tree line. A figure, familiar, 2 claws on each hand. A new clone, one that hadn't escaped, still controlled, still programmed, and behind it for more. The factory wasn't dead. It had multiplied. He didn't hesitate. His claws extended, not from his knuckles, but from his forearms now, like swords. Wider, sharper, gold-lined. The wind roared. The snow shook, and he whispered to the copies in front of him, "If you remember pain, you're already free." Then he lunged, and the war for Wolverine's legacy truly began. The battlefield smelled like blood and burned metal. 5 clones lay broken in the snow, each one faster than the last. Smarter, more violent, but none of them had survived. Only one stood breathing, the original clone, the one Wolverine died for. He didn't smile. He didn't rest. He looked at their faces, his own face, and said nothing, because he knew what they were, copies of a copy, built by a dying machine desperate to control a ghost. He picked up a shard of mirror steel from the ground, looked into it. The face staring back wasn't Logan's anymore. It was his. Later that night, Xavier summoned the inner circle. "He's changing faster than we thought," Charles said. "Not just in mind. In biology, his mutation is evolving." Jean leaned forward. "Into what?" Beast pulled up a scan. "His skeleton is fusing with something new. Not just adamantium. Organic metal. Self-repairing. Self-sharpening." Cyclops asked, "What's triggering it?" Beast hesitated. "Memory. Every time he relives pain, his body adapts." Charles added, "He isn't becoming a monster. He's becoming a response." "To what?" Storm asked. "To all of us," Charles replied. The room fell silent, because they all knew what that meant. They hadn't just failed Logan. They'd created a legacy that was rewriting itself, faster than they could control. Across the world, cameras caught him in motion. One day in Tokyo, one night in Cairo. 2 hours later, Sokovia burned again, and the lab beneath it was gone. Every step he took erased another part of Weapon X history. But something else had changed. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was leaving messages. One scratched into a Krakoan supply crate. "You turned pain into protocol." One burned into a shield locker. "You knew what I was. You let me stay broken." One written across a mutant prison wall in blood. "You buried him with your silence." And the last one broadcasted straight into Cerebro in Logan's voice. "If you're hearing this, Bob, they're still lying." The voice wasn't a recording. It was a perfect mimic. His voice, his tone, his rage. Jean's hands shook as she replayed it. "He's not just remembering Logan," she said. "He's becoming him, better, sharper, untethered." Storm whispered, "Then who will stop him?" Nobody answered, because the only one who ever could was already dead. He didn't stop with labs. He started targeting people, directors, surgeons, scientists who touched Logan's DNA. Not one of them died the same way. Some vanished. Some reappeared, scarred, but alive. And one was found with his vocal cords removed and the words "Speak no legacy" tattooed on his neck. This wasn't revenge. It was surgical erasure. One target remained. The last scientist from the original Weapon X Council, hidden in a government bunker beneath Washington, D.C. The X-Men intercepted him mid-breach. Cyclops, Jean, Storm, Beast, Nightcrawler, 5 against 1. But when they saw him, they froze. Because he wasn't just stronger, he was transformed. His arms layered in liquid adamantium scales. His eyes no longer glowing, just empty, focused. He looked at them, not with hatred, but pity. "I don't want war," he said. Cyclops raised his visor. "Then stop." "I can't." Jean stepped forward. "Why?" "Because every time I breathe, I remember what you let him become." Storm whispered, "You're not him." He shook his head. "No, I'm what happens when no one stops becoming him." He stepped forward, and for the first time, the X-Men stepped back. Because they didn't see a clone anymore. They saw judgment, and it wore Logan's bones like a flag. The facility in Alberta was dead quiet. No guards, no cameras, just wind. But inside, beneath concrete and time, something ancient waited. The original Weapon X command chamber, frozen shut for decades. The place where Logan's mind was broken and rebuilt into a weapon. Now, the clone stood before it, breathing slow, listening to the ghosts under steel. He stepped forward, and the doors opened without resistance. Inside, lights flickered. Machines still hummed like they remembered him. But they didn't recognize what he'd become, because this wasn't their subject. This was their reckoning. At the core of the chamber sat a glass vault. Inside, a single capsule. Not a clone, not data, just an old, flickering hologram. Logan's voice, a final message. "If you're watching this, Bub, it means I didn't make it. Means you did. The clone didn't move. Maybe you're my copy, my shadow, my better. Doesn't matter. I just got one thing to say. You ain't me. You're not my pain, not my leash, not my revenge. You're free. So stop being a mirror and start being something new. And whatever you become, make sure they fear it. That's my legacy. Not my claws, not my rage. Just that I never let him win." The hologram blinked out. Silence. Then the vault self-destructed, its code complete. No data left. No blueprints. No backups. The clone stood still as the flames swallowed the chamber. He didn't run. He walked through fire. And when he emerged, his claws glowed white-hot. The X-Men arrived too late. The mountain behind them collapsed in seconds. Not from bombs, from a controlled burn so precise, even Beast couldn't explain it. Storm asked quietly, "Is it over?" Jean didn't answer. She turned, eyes closed, and felt a presence moving through the wind. Not like a ghost, like something final. Back at the Institute, Xavier made one last update to the Cerebro logs. Logan, deceased. Weapon X clone, missing. Codename assigned, Feralex. Status, do not pursue. Cyclops objected. Charles said, "This is not a man we need to find. He is a reminder we need to live with." Somewhere, far from cities and files, Feralex stood beneath the sky, untouched by war. No labs, no hunters, just wind and snow. And at his feet, buried in stone, was a new grave. The tag read, "Logan. He died saving a monster. And that monster chose to end the war." Feralex turned away from the grave. He wasn't done. He was just beginning. Because he wasn't a clone anymore. He was the last truth left standing. And the world would remember him not as a weapon, but as the roar that came after the legend fell silent.